Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today evening. So, as I mentioned, I will speak to the topic of reincarnation. And I will speak this in three broad parts. First is from a scientific perspective. We'll examine the evidence. Then I talk from a logical perspective, how reincarnation helps us to make sense of certain things in our life. And lastly, I'll talk from a relational personal perspective, how our longing for relationships can be channeled and fulfilled through reincarnation. So, let's begin. I was recently in America, about 6 months ago. I was in the Massachusetts University. There I spoke on this topic of reincarnation. And a question came up, which has come many times before also. And as people, whenever they hear about reincarnation, they ask about, do we all have soulmates? So, is it that I have some partner designated for me, whom I'm meant to meet, with whom I'm meant to unite? There's a mate for my soul. So usually, what I answer about that is that maybe, maybe not. But the important thing in the soulmate is that focus more on the soul than on the mate. What that means is that, yes, whether we have a relationship that crosses across lifetimes, that is important to know. But more important than that is whether we have something within us which crosses across lifetimes. If there is to be a soulmate, there has to be soul existing first. So if there a building in the city, okay, for a building to be there existing, there has to be the ground first. There's no ground, there can't be any building. So we start with the fundamentals. I'll come to this concept of the soulmate towards the end. So I have written a book on this topic of demystifying reincarnation, and I focus primarily on the empirical pointers which have been uncovered by science. So reincarnation today has become quite romanticized. Many times in Bollywood movies, I heard a few Hollywood movies have also talked about reincarnation themes. And maybe we need to decrease the volume. Yeah. Such romanticization makes it sensational, but often reincarnation is reduced to a story plot. That means whether it is real or not, people don't think about that. But the thing is, it's a nice, sometimes the stories you show ghosts, sometimes the story you show so many things. So there's so reincarnation also. So it's not just a story plot. Is there any serious research? Is there any serious investigation of this? So let's look at this. So this is Dr. Ian Stevenson. Stevenson was he's a pioneer in the scientific study of reincarnation. And he wrote many books. The book on the right was his first book, 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. And he spent almost 5 decades studying this subject. And he traveled across all the inhabited continents and uncovered and investigated thousands of cases across the world. And only those cases which withstood critical scrutiny, rigorous critical scrutiny, only those he included in his books. And the last book he wrote was Where Reincarnation and Biology Intersect. So he uncovered broadly 4 distinct lines of evidence, specifically with past life memories. The past life memories are situations where, say, a child is learning to talk, and one day the child says to Mom, where is my other mom? What? Or the child says to Dad, I'm small now, but I was bigger than you before. What? His parents can't compute it. The child starts speaking things very specific about the previous life. where the child is, I was so and so person and I did so and so things. And he found that there are broadly 4 types of evidences: recollections, recognitions, behaviors, and birthmarks. So recollections means, as I said, the child remembers, I was so and so person at so and so place. Now along with that, it's not just some memory, but the child is taken over there. And the child goes there and recognizes, hey, you are my mother, you are my cousin, this is the place I used to play. He recognizes places, objects and people connected with the person who was claiming to be in the previous life. And third is behaviors. The child starts behaving like the previous person. And that means the child will connect with the previous life's parents, although they may be like the grandfather's age now, as if they're the parents. And many aspects of the behavior. Sometimes the child may even have behavioral knowledge. The child, say in India there are different states and different languages. The child is born in Maharashtra and claims that I was a South Indian before. Child is taken to Andhra and the child starts speaking the Telugu. Suddenly. So behaviors. And last is birthmarks, where the child has specific marks related with the fatal wounds from the previous lives. So let's this seem abstract. Let's go into 2 cases. And as I mentioned, I'll be speaking in 3 parts. So after each part, I'll pause for some reflection or some questions. And of course, we'll have questions at the end. So let's look at one particular case to make this point more clear. So when you talk about birthmarks, so some children may have some birthmarks, they have some mole on the face or something like that. But the birthmarks that these children have are very specific. So this was the case of, is a picture from Stevenson's book. And this boy, he was walking along the road and he was knocked down by a truck. And then the truck ran over his thigh. And the boy eventually succumbed to injuries and died. So the next life, when the child was born, his thigh had this kind of contortion to it. Now medically speaking, this is a very unusual birthmark. It is not just some scratch or mole or something like that. So there are marks like this on children's bodies, and they're very difficult to explain purely from a medical perspective. So this is one particular case which Stevenson investigated, which I have explained elaborately in my book also. So Naresh Kumar Raidas was born in Bajnagar in UP, and he, while he was a child, he started saying that actually I am Mushir. I am Mushir Ali Shah, and I live in another village in Kakori. And he would, before the day, Kakori, Kakori, he would start calling out like that. And then he would start saying Kakra, Kakra. Now Kakra in the local language means cart. And then nobody would be looking, just a few years old, 4, 5, 6, he would just sit on his knees as if he were offering prayers and namaz. And as soon as somebody would see him, he would stop it. So, as he was doing like this, his parents found this very peculiar. But there was there's a Muslim mendicant, a Muslim beggar. He would come to their village, to Bajnagar, and his name was Fakir Ali Shah. And Mushir Ali Shah was the son of Fakir. So, had been, who had passed away. So now when this Naresh was just a small boy, when the Fakir would come to his house to beg for alms, at that time, Naresh would just go after him. And now traditionally in India, in that part of the world, a mendicant is not just a beggar, a mendicant is like a religious person who is begging. So he's called a Baba. But although his mother would tell him to address him as Baba, he would call him as Abba. Appa is a North Indian way of referring to one's parent, father specifically. And then he would go after him. Very small, he would go after one house, or 2 houses, 3 houses. And then this Fakir would look at him and neglected, walk away, and then he would come back to his house. And when he was around 6, one day, Naresh told his mother that I want to go to the fakir's house. That is my house. And he said, what are you talking about? If you don't take me there, I'll go alone myself. And then his mother became concerned. He said, okay, let us go. Now they went to a part of that particular village, another village, neighboring village. They had never been there. The Muslims and Hindus who live slightly separate areas. So his mother had never any reason to go there. But he went there, and he himself, of course, had never been there. Went straight to the house. And he recognized the fakir's wife, whom he had never met. He called her Ammi. And he identified her Najima, and then she had a sister, he had a brother who was sleeping. He said, where is Nasim? He says, he's sleeping. And he just ran to him and hugged him. And Nasim woke up. It's a strange boy hugging me. Who are you? He says, you don't recognize me, I'm a Shia. And not only that, naturally, in a small village, any such unusual event becomes news. So all the neighbors came over there. And I said, identify the neighbors also. And there was one woman, he said, I had given your husband 20 rupees. Did you give it back to him? And nobody knew about this. And like that, he recognized so many things. They were stunned. And then, now what had happened was Mushir was a fruit seller. And one day he had been taking a cart to a nearby town, to sell the fruits and vegetables. At that time, a truck had hit him. And that truck had hit him, and the truck's, because of the truck, a pole from the cart had pierced into his chest. And he had died over there. And now, the fakir noticed that he has a depression on his chest. More or less the same area where their son had got a fatal wound. Along with that, also they found that there was this boy, he had a typical behavior, unusual behavior. Then some boy comes to a person's house, they brought Indian cultures, you give him some gift, and then see him off. So they gave him some, they were also poor, they gave him a few coins. What? He said, I want tea and eggs. Now Mushir used to love tea and eggs. And Naresh, he was in a Hindu vegetarian family, he would not eat eggs. So his mother was taken aback. And he demanded that, and they fed him, and then he left. So now, you see, there's 4 characteristics, or 4 lines of evidence. What are they? Recollections. He remembered, okay, I'm Mushir. All that. Then after that, recognitions. He recognized Najima, he recognized Nasim. Then, behaviors. So he actually ran and hugged Nasim. And not only that, he demanded, I want this food. And then, birthmarks. So there was a depression on his chest. Now, all these evidences, Stevenson, as I said, he did almost 4 decades of research. And later on he found that many of them had significant birthmarks. So let's look at another case where there was a very significant birthmark. So this is Nasib Ulutas Kiran. He was born in Adan in Turkey. And as he was growing up, at age 3 or 4, he would tell his parents, my name is Nasib. He said, yes, your name is Nasib. He says, no, my name is Nasib Buddha. He says, no, your name is Nasib Ulutas Kiran. And then he started saying, actually I live in Mersin, which is about 80 kilometers away from there. And now his parents didn't take it seriously. But then, eventually, they decided that he demanded, I want to go there. And his mother's father had recently remarried, and he was living in his new wife was from a village near Mersin. So his mother went to see them. And then after that wedding, and there Nasib spoke, oh, you are from Mersin? Do you know Nasib Buddha? And she said, yes. He was there, he was a violent person, and he had died in an accident. Somebody had stabbed him with a knife. And he became very excited. He said, I want to go there, like I am Nasib. He started describing many details of Nasib Budak's life, and his grandfather got intrigued. His grandfather took him there. And now, Nasib had never been to Mercy, but as soon as he got there, he straight took to a particular house. And there, a woman was living, and she was at home, and she was a widow of a man named Nasib Budak. And then, not only that, he recognized her, he recognized the neighborhood, he pointed out certain landmarks which nobody knew about, which there's no way he would have known about, identified them specifically. And then Nasib Budak had been a short-tempered person. And he said that at one time he had got into an altercation, a quarrel with his wife, and he got angry and had picked up a knife and had slashed at her. Now she had dodged, but the knife had grazed her inner thigh as she had tried to move aside. So Nasib said that she has got a scar on her inner thigh. Then Stevenson got one of his female assistants to take this woman privately, and he examined. So she had a thigh, and she said that yes, my previous husband, he had attacked me. That's how I got this thigh. Now, for a boy who has never met a woman who lives in another city, for her to have that she has a scar on the private part of her body, how would he ever know that? And not only that, when Nasib saw this boy saw Nasib Budak's children. And those children were older than him now. But when he came to them, he started fondling their hair and treating them as if they were his children. And then in the meanwhile, his widow had remarried. So her husband was not there at that time at the home, but he saw a photo of his previous life's wife with the husband, and he got so angry. He just picked up the photo and he wanted to rip it apart. He said, "You are my wife, no one else's wife." And this was a small child. So it just couldn't compute for them. Now, of course, they were Muslims, so they didn't accept reincarnation. But there's just no way they could deny the evidence. And the most significant here is with respect to as I mentioned these points, that he was affectionate and he was jealous, but there are birthmarks. Now, Nasib Budak in his previous life had actually been a short-tempered person, and once he had drunk and he had got into a quarrel with someone else, and that person had also been drunk, and that person had taken out a knife and stabbed him multiple times. And eventually he had been rushed to hospital, but the next day he had succumbed to all the wounds. Now, whenever Nasib, this boy, would remember about Nasib Budak, he would point to various parts of his body. So, this is where I was stabbed, this is where I was stabbed. And those were the places where Nasib Budak had been born with birthmarks, with scars on the body. Now, there were 6 scars. And Stevenson, in order to be precise, decided to investigate the precise location of those scars. So he divided the human body, if you consider XY coordinates, he divided it into 160 points. And then he correlated how precise was the location of the previous life's fatal wound and this life's birthmark. And he found it was 1 by 160 degree specific. It was precise. Exact same location. Now, one birthmark correlation could be a fluke, could be just by chance. 2, maybe. 3, unlikely. But here, Nasib had 6 correlating birthmarks. It is 1 by 160 raised to the power of 6. So this just strains credibility. How did this come about? Now, scientists, gynecologists and others will be knowing that when children get birthmarks, broadly speaking, there are some well-known causes for it. One is genetic. Say some children, in some families, they always have a mole or some kind of birthmark which, say, they have generation after generation. The second is that during pregnancy, during gestation, if the mother gets some disease, that might cause some birthmark. Or if the mother uses some harmful substances, the mother smokes or drinks, or some behavior which harms the child, that might cause some birthmarks. Now, even medical science, they find that almost 30 to 50% of the cases where children have birthmarks, neither of these factors apply. So they don't know why these birthmarks are coming. So this is a possible explanation that from a previous life, the fatal wounds are getting impressed on the body in the next life. Now there are naturally skeptics about the evidence. So there could be various explanations of how could some child remember something like this. So one explanation could be that the child is guessing it. But okay, even if you guess it, how do you create birthmarks? You can't do that. You're guessing it. Even how will a child guess that somebody has a scratch, somebody has a scar on their inner thigh? It's a guesswork doesn't work. But more importantly, that a common explanation is these are parents who believe in this, and the parents, they, in order to reinforce their belief, they create a fraud by which they tell the child like this. But even if it were like that, even if we assume that it's a parent, as a fraud orchestrated by the parents, but still, what do the parents gain out of it? Stevenson and subsequent researchers who followed his methodology had a strict policy that they would not pay any parents for investigating their cases. Because their valid apprehension was that if they started paying, then people would come with more and more sensational cases just to get more attention and maybe get more money. So many of these parents whose children were claiming to be remembering past lives, they were from poor families. Not everyone, across the economic spectrum, but many of them were poor families, and they had nothing to gain. And if you go on Stevenson's website and look at his questionnaire, it's a rigorous questioning. It goes on hours and hours and hours. And sometimes the same, it's almost like in a criminal investigation, how the witnesses are cross-examined. Either the accused is cross-examined by the police, or the witnesses are cross-examined by the court. So like that he questions people. So it takes hours and hours of time for the people, for the parents and others to answer the questions. They gain nothing. In fact, many of them are living a hand-to-mouth existence, so they lose precious hours which they could be earning money. So there's no monetary gain at all in this. And sometimes it happens that the children may be belonging to previous, maybe claiming to be reincarnations of some family which is wealthy. But Stevenson said that he has never met any case where the parents in this new family say that, oh, he's your son, so to take care of him, you should pay us. There's no monetary gain over there. Along with that, there might be some fame. There are many people who claim to be reincarnations of famous personalities. There are at least till now documented a dozen girls who claim to be the reincarnation of Marilyn Monroe. Now, Stevenson always treated such cases of celebrity reincarnation with suspicion. There is an obvious motive to create a fraud over it. And the cases which he investigated seriously and which he has put in his books, not one of them is about any celebrity. And so there is no fame to gain by it. Now somebody will say, no, but you believe in reincarnation and you want some evidence to support that. And that's why you might come up with this. So there will be a religious motive to prove that one's own religious doctrine is right. Yes, that could be, but there are many cases of parents who are non-believers, who didn't believe in reincarnation at all. There are cases in America, there are cases in Australia, there are cases in Europe, like I talked about the case in Turkey. There was no parents who accepted it already. Rather, the parents were forced by the evidence to accept it. And even among parents who accepted reincarnation, these parents lived in rural areas or small towns where nobody doubted reincarnation. So they had no reason to want to prove their faith in reincarnation. To the contrary, in India, especially in rural India, there is this belief that if a child remembers the past life, that means that the child is not integrated into the body, present body properly. And that indicates that the child will die soon. Now this is superstition. And Stevenson did actual study. He said there's no correlation between the past life memories and the longevity of the child. But it's a belief that is there. And yeah, because of this belief, most parents, they know that yes, our child is a reincarnation of someone, but what is the big deal about it? They have no interest in proving, and many times actually the parents try to suppress the memories. In fact, many times if a child starts speaking, I was so and so, then the parents try to suppress the memory so that the child will go on with normal life. And especially Antonia Mills, she's a researcher, and she's written a whole issue of Journal of Scientific Exploration where she describes cross-religious reincarnation. That means a Hindu becomes a Muslim or a Muslim becomes a Hindu in India. And he said in these cases, neither parent wanted any reincarnational connection. Because of the tension between the communities, neither parent wanted it. So there are Muslim boys who claim to be Hindus in the previous life and Hindus who claim to be Muslims in the previous life, whichever way. They said that among Muslims often it would happen that the parents would call some people to do some black magic to try to get their child to become free from the ghost that is making him think like this. But when nothing would work, only then they would take the child to check, correlate whether the facts are actually true. So from that perspective, there is no evidence, there is no basis to say that it's a fraud. Now of course, some cases may be frauds, no doubt. But to reject the whole body of evidence by calling it as fraud is just refusing to consider the evidence on its merit. And Tom Schroeder is an editor of the Washington Times, and when he is an outright skeptic. So he heard about Ian Stevenson's research and he decided to investigate it. So he wrote a book called Old Souls. And he went with Stevenson. He came to India and he went to Libya. Two main countries where during the several months Stevenson was investigating past life memories. And he found that Stevenson was rigorously critical in his examination. Okay. He started with no presumption that this case is right, no desire to prove that the case is right. So he documented his experiences and then he wrote about this, that if we examine the cases, then neither self-delusion, intentional fraud, peer pressure, nor coincidence could explain how the children he investigated could have known all that they knew about strangers who had died before they were born. So no logical explanation works over here. No logical explanation if we assume materialism to be true. Materialism means matter is all that exists, and with the death of the body, everything is destroyed. But if we don't, we are open to questioning whether materialism is true, then there is a reasonable explanation. So this child who is living here is like one, if you consider maths, this is one set. And the person who has died at some other time, some other place is another set. In the materialistic worldview, these two sets have no intersection point. Then how is that this child is able to remember this person's life? So, if you consider spiritual worldview, then maybe this child is not just the body, there is a spiritual spark, and that spiritual spark which is present in this body was existing in this body earlier. So for the many cases of past life memories, the idea that reincarnation, re is again, in means into, karna is flesh, like a carnivorous animals. So karna means into flesh, to come again into flesh, to again come into a physical body. So reincarnation is the most reasonable explanation for the cases that are experienced, for such cases of documented and investigated past life memories. So this is the first point. Now there are multiple other scientific evidences also. There are evidences from near-death experiences, there are evidences from the irreducibility of consciousness, but we will not go into that. We will focus on past life memories. The past life memories strongly suggest that there is a spiritual spark which moves from one life to another, and that is how the past life memories do occur. So any comments or questions about this till now? Yes, please.
I had a question. 99% I think world population don't have recollection. Why is that? If you all are reincarnation, then why are 99% world population not having?
Good question, yeah. So why do 99% of the people not have past life memories? Yeah, we could also turn the question around and why do 1% have past life memories? Could ask that both questions are similar. See, broadly speaking, most of our memories are situational. That means, say you may have lived in a particular house or maybe when you are 5 years old. Now, how much do you remember about that house? Maybe some details. But if you go to that house, you go into that situation, you'll remember much more. So generally, we can say that our memory exists at multiple layers. And when a particular situation stimulates a particular recollection, that recollection pops up. And there's no if now you come to a house and that house seems to be exactly like the house which you were living 5 years ago, then you might remember that house. But otherwise you will not remember. So first point is, most of our memory is situational. And when the soul goes from one body to another body, the situation changes drastically. And because of that change in situation, much of the memory gets obscured. Now, our existence, the Bhagavad-Gita explains this 3 levels. There is body, mind and soul. So when we go from one body to another, the body and the mind go together. And the impressions are stored in the mind. But the impressions stored in the mind can go so deep inside the mind, and unless there is some stimulus, we may not actually recollect them at all. Just like we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind. So a lot of the subconscious mind we don't know about. If we have a computer, we might have some files which are open in our computer, and we might have some files which we usually operate or use, but there may be many files in the computer we don't even know about. And only when we are searching for something else and that search parameter connects with that file, this file is there in my computer. Where did it come from? We are not going to recollect that. So like that, for us, unless there is some situational stimulus, there can be a lot of memory that we just don't remember. That's one point. Second point is that death itself is a traumatic experience. And birth itself is also not a very pleasant experience. So the child to be cramped in the mother's womb, from the perspective of a conscious being, is not very pleasant. Okay. Am I audible behind or no? Okay. Okay. So the second point is that because these are traumatic experiences, so generally we remember traumas for some time. But after some time, the traumas are forgotten. Otherwise, we cannot go on with life. If somebody loses a loved one, it's very painful. But if you keep remembering that forever, then we can't go on. So they say time is the greatest healer. So just as time passes, we tend to forget things. So painful experiences, in order to move on with life, we tend to forget them. And in general, when the soul goes from one body to another body, because a new body is a new chapter. So the natural mechanism is that a lot is forgotten. Nature's arrangement is that a lot is forgotten. So that's why, because our memory is situational, because we need to forget trauma to move on with life, and because a new life is an entirely different chapter. So the past life memories could very well interfere with functioning in this life. So the normal mechanism is that we forget past lives. However, generally most memories that do occur of previous lives, they occur because the event of death has not been processed properly. Most of the children who remember their past lives are children of people, whoever it may be. They have had sudden and violent deaths. So for the soul, when the soul leaves one body and goes into another body, there is a certain amount of closure that is required. When the body dies, there is physical closure. But there is emotional closure also that is required. And if death happens very suddenly, then there is no emotional closure. And then the soul may go into the next body, but still, because of the lack of emotional closure, the soul keeps remembering the previous body. And we could say this is something like jet lag. With the jet, when we suddenly go from one country to another country, the body's biological clock still is functioning according to the previous country. So like that, the soul has gone into the next body, but the person keeps functioning according to the previous. The child keeps remembering the previous body. And in general, when the child goes and meets the children from the people from the previous lives and talks with them, it's there after that most children get some emotional closure. It's never happened that the child has said, okay, I reject my parents from this life, I want to go and live with them. It doesn't happen like that. The children may maintain some connection with the previous life also, but overall, it gives them closure. So in some exceptional cases, some children may remember because they're not able to process the death properly. So that's how only a few % remember, because only few cases may be there where the death is not processed properly. Okay?
So in a sense, basically you will remember just the past life. But I have heard the incidents or read somewhere that they remember the past life which happened many, many worlds ago, not like just immediate last one. So how?
Generally, yeah. Can people remember very old past lives? It's possible, but most of those cases what I have seen is not spontaneous recollection. It is hypnotic regression. When some therapist, they actually lead you into a past life. So it's like, going back to software example, we are consciously searching for some file. Is this file there? What is there in this folder? What is there in this folder? What is there in this folder? So now hypnotic regression, it has been well documented to heal people of some emotional wounds. Say somebody has hydrophobia. Just go near water, I don't know. They can't even bathe. With the glass of water, they are afraid. Water bodies, they are just petrified. So then they take them to hypnotic regression, it takes them to a previous life, and then they understand. Maybe in the previous life I drowned. And then that helps them to get closure. Okay, that was the danger over there, that's what scarred me. But there's nothing for me to be afraid of now. So the healing potential of hypnotic regression to previous lives, even distant lives, that has been well documented. But how true they are, that is very sometimes difficult to verify. Like 2, 3, 4 lifetimes if you're going behind, what evidence might be there now? When somebody says I was XYZ, what records will you have that XYZ existed here? And it's relatively difficult to confirm that. So the hypnotic regression can remind one of previous lives also, but generally spontaneous past life memories are about just the recent life. Yes?
Prabhu, when we die, the material body, usually in Hinduism, like we fire or we get buried, then how does the marks come in the next birth? Because
Okay, good question. Good question. Yeah. So how do the marks come from one body to another body? If the body is cremated and it's destroyed, every event that we go through forms impressions on the mind. And depending on how intense that experience is, that much deep impressions are formed. So, if somebody has sustained a fatal wound, then the wound is formed on the body. Say the knife has stabbed them on the hand or the chest or whatever. But then the shock and the trauma comes as an impression on their mind. I was stabbed, I was stabbed, I was stabbed. And then that impression which is there in the mind goes with the soul to the next body. And when the soul is in the mother's womb, that impression impresses itself on the physical body. I was stabbed, I was stabbed, I was stabbed. And that impression, that mark comes on the physical body. So, Stevenson has written a paper about a paranormal modification of biological forms, where that means that he has much evidence that the kind of thoughts that we have, they can modify the bodily forms even in this life. What to speak of next life? He documents some cases of, say, a pregnant woman. She watched a lot of movies in which there are a lot of horrific killing and cutting and stuff like that. And when the child was born, he was paranoid whenever he would see horror movies. Now, horror movies horrify everyone, but this child's reaction was way out of the scale. And not only that, there are cases where the mother would see a particular, sometimes even if you see horror movies or horrible scenes, some scenes impress too much on her mind. So the mother had seen a scene where somebody's arm had been cut in a very sudden and brutal way. So when this child was born, he had not a cut arm, but a scar on the arm. And so there are evidences in that direction that our thoughts can cause impressions on the body also. Not just our body, but even the body that is there within us also. Yes. Any other questions? Yes?
How does soul come to know about new conception? How may it enter with a new conception or new body?
How does the soul come to know about which new body to go to?
Like whenever any new conception happens, how does the soul migrate from?
Okay, conception. Okay. How does the soul come to know when new conception is happening? Not necessarily that the soul has to know. That basically, see, the biological and the spiritual work in parallel. It's like right now I'm speaking, there is a biological mechanism by which how it is happening. Could say that my voice box is moving, and because it's moving in a particular way, so particular sounds are coming out. So that's a biological mechanism. Now the same biological mechanism and the components of the biological mechanism may be present even in a dead body. But nothing will happen over there. No speech will emanate from there. So there is a conscious being who is speaking, and they are using a biological mechanism. So the biological mechanism of speech and the conscious being's intention to speak both work parallel for speech to occur. So similarly, with respect to the soul getting a new body during conception. So there is a biological process wherein the seed, the sperm from the male and the egg from the female unite, and then the zygote is formed, and that's how the process moves forward. So now the soul enters into the sperms, and that's why it may not be that there's only one soul entering into one sperm. There could be multiple souls. So basically the soul is looking for biological mediums, biochemical mediums where it can get a proper body. And wherever a suitable biochemical medium is likely to come, the soul is present over there. And sometimes it may happen by natural processes. It's like, say, a man and a woman unite, and then the sperm is taken together with the egg. Sometimes it might be, you may have the baby outside you may have an artificial uterus-like environment, artificial insemination can be there. And so many other processes can be there. But the important thing is that the stimulation for growth, that happens because there is conscious being present over there. And there are different ways in which the soul can end up in the scene. But the soul doesn't necessarily have to go through one particular pathway. The soul is subtle. Because the soul is subtle, so the soul doesn't need a physical path, it's not through the mouth or through the eyes or through the ears. The soul can just, because it's subtle, it can directly enter into the body also. And the super soul, it is God. God is present with each one of us as a companion. Ishvara sarvabhutana hriddeshi arjutishtati. Brahmayan sarvabhutani yatra rudhani maya. The Bhagavad Gita 18.61 says that the super soul, the manifestation of God within us, that super soul is directing the wanderings of all living beings. So when the soul goes from one body to another body, it is the super soul who guides. And that's how the soul itself does not know, but the soul, you could say at a subconscious level, is gravitating towards getting another body. Just like, we may not even, right now if say, this is hot. Now I will not even realize, consciously realize it's hot, but if I touch my hand, immediately my hand will move back. So it's just a reflex action. So like that the soul itself gravitates towards a suitable biochemical medium, but which specific biochemical medium it will go to and where it will manifest as consciousness, as an embodied being, that is directed by the super soul. Okay, thank you. Yes? We'll come back to you.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
My question is three parts. The first part is, does the soul attain a Pretatma? Number two, what is the impact of the 13-day Vaikuntha Samadhana function? And number three, which is the most powerful impression or samskara that helps the soul get a new one?
Okay, thank you. So, does the soul get a Pretatma? Yeah, first question is that basically in the stage between this body and next body, there can be different phases. So the normal idea is that there is a physical body and there is a subtle body. So the soul, when it goes from one body to another, it basically leaves the physical body and goes with the subtle body to the next body. So for the journey of the soul from this body to another body, it gets, you could say, a transitional body, which is grosser than the subtle body and subtler than the gross body. It's a transitional body. And that stage of transitional body is called a Pretatma. So the soul goes, so the transitional body, that is called the Pretatma. Now, you could say in a sense that every soul will go through the transitional phase. But generally, the word Pretatma is used for particular situations where the soul stays in that transition stage for a long time and the soul comes back. So that's how there are something called as ghosts. Now when ghosts haunt people, what is exactly happening? The gross body that is left behind. And the dead body, it's dead now, it's inactive. The soul and the subtle body have come out. Normally the soul and the subtle body would go into another body. It's like, say, if we leave one house, then we go into another house. But some people, if they don't get a new house, then they become homeless. So like that, souls who become ghosts are homeless souls. More precisely, not homeless souls, but bodiless souls. So they have physical, they have the subtle body, the soul is there, but the soul does not get into any other body. And that's how they become ghosts. Now sometimes what happens is, these ghosts enter into other people. That's how we say the ghost possessed somebody. So there are cases, I also met people like that. Now this is the person who is speaking, who is a Maharashtrian, and suddenly that person starts speaking Bengali, although they never knew any Bengali. They are speaking fluently. So in such cases what happens? The soul is looking, the ghost has many desires. Ghost has many things to do. But because there is no physical body to do it in, so the ghost is wandering about. And sometimes it might just forcibly enter into somebody's body. And when they enter into that body, they temporarily take over the body. So the possessing ghost has now taken over the body. And then during that period, the person who is possessed, it's like their personality becomes dormant. That soul becomes inactive. So now, this is of course a different subject, but when you go back previously here, that when the soul has come out in the transition phase, what it has is the transition body, which is called as the Pretatma. Okay. Now the second question was about the period, 13-day period. The important thing is that we have relationships in the world with each other, and when death happens, that relationship at this level ends. But because we have love, respect, care for our relatives, so we want to help them in their onward journey. So the post-death rituals that are performed are to help the soul move forward in its journey. And the idea is that the soul may wander about in the vicinity for some time. And that's why in the broad Hindu tradition or broad Dharmic tradition, the body is generally burnt. Because the soul may have a strong lingering attachment to the body and may still hope, maybe I can enter into this body again, maybe I can live in this body. But when the body is burnt, then there is a irrevocable closure that comes. And the soul's bonds to that body, the attachment may not be cut off, but at least the hope that they can enter into the body is cut off. The soul becomes more free to go onwards. And then, depending on, these specifics may vary depending on karma, but the broad understanding is that when we perform certain rites of passage, certain rituals, that help the soul transition on to the next body. So the specific rites of passage might be different in different traditions or different communities, but the important thing is we help that soul on the onward journey. And it may be sometimes 13 days, sometimes 10 days, sometimes 11 days. That can vary from community to community. The idea is that those practices that we do, they are meant to help that soul go forward in the next destination. Okay? What is the third question? Which impression is the most important to get the new body? It's not that one impression is the most important. It is that whichever impression during the course of our life we have put the deepest limits. That is the impression that will determine our next life. So, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tejatyante kalevaram tam tam ivaiti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavita. Krishna says that whatever we remember at the time of death, that is what we will attain. We will call this, broadly speaking, as the law of last thought. So now what we remember at the time of death, it is determined by what we have remembered the most throughout our life. Generally, whenever there is danger, we want some shelter. So if suddenly there is a prediction that there is going to be a freezing cold in the area, then we would want to go to that part of our home which is the warmest. We seek shelter over there. Just as we physically move, like that emotionally also our thoughts move towards that in which we have experienced the deepest shelter. So if somebody, for them, a particular relationship, say even battle-hardened soldiers, when they have wounds, often they call out for their mother. Because in the mother's lap, they have experienced the greatest shelter, the greatest security. So whatever we are most attached to, that is where we have experienced the greatest shelter or pleasure. That's where our thoughts gravitate towards, even subconsciously, without our even thinking about it. That's why the thing which we have become most attached to during the course of our lives, that's what we will gravitate thinking about that at the time of death. And that's what will determine our next destination. So one way to understand what that impression is to look at what we think about when we don't have anything to think about. When we are idle, where do our thoughts gravitate towards? That's what is we are likely to think about. That's our foremost attachment. That's the impression that will define our next life's destination. Any other questions? Yes?
Do humans have to reincarnate again in the human form?
Do humans have to reincarnate again in human form? Not necessarily. It depends on the karma. See, basically, for all the actions that we do, we could say there is a karmic bank account that is formed. Some of the good that we do may get good results for that right away. Some of the good we do, we do not get any results for that. Some of the bad we do, we might get consequences for that. Some of the bad we will not get consequences. So whatever consequences we don't get, they are accumulated in the overall karmic bank account. And when the soul has to go to new body, there's a withdrawal made from that bank account, which determines the next body. It's like if you consider the body to be like a house for the soul, then when we leave one house, which house we get next will depend on two factors: what we like and how much we can afford. So similarly, our karma, our desire, and our karma, our paying capacity, our budget, these two determine our next body. So if the soul has done a decent amount of good karma, the soul has had some interest in spirituality, then the soul is likely to get a human body. The soul has done a lot of negative karma. The soul has no interest in anything spiritual. Soul is interested only in sensual pleasures, or the person has been only interested in sensuality. Then nature says that for sensual pleasures, an animal body is much more conducive than a human body. The soul may get an animal body accordingly. So, okay, yes, last question, yeah.
But how do we distinguish if it's like a ghost is entered or is it a past life memory? Any sort of...
Okay, that's a good question. So, how do we know that it's a ghost or a past life memory? That's why we have to see whether that past life memory correlates with some facts. Now, we could also say still that the past life memory, which even if it correlates with some facts, it could be that the ghost was living over there, not that I was living over there. That's still possible. So we have to see the longevity of that memory. So after usually there is possession, then after the possession gets over, usually the person who was possessed doesn't even remember. Like they woke up from a stupor, from a trance or a sleep or something like that. What happened? They didn't even know what they did. Usually when they're possessed, it's like that. But in the case of somebody is remembering a past life, it is, they remember themselves very clearly. So the longevity of the memory can make a significant difference in determining. Yes. There's a question there? Yes, please.
So the question is about, in regards to what Soft the Atlantean, he was reincarnated himself 3 times and was worshipped like a god during that process before it was washed away. But is there any practices in, consciously reincarnating?
Okay. So are there any practices by which you can consciously reincarnate at a particular place or a particular time? Generally the soul, when it leaves one body, it is largely dependent on karma. We can't consciously determine a specific destination. We can determine the direction of the destination. That means, if we do good karma, we will be born in a better situation. If we do bad karma, we will be born in an unfavorable situation. But specifics within that, actually specifics, even in this life, how much can we determine? Maybe at the age of 15 or 20, you decide, I want to become so and so person. Now, not many people are able to fulfill their dreams. And even those who are able to fulfill their dreams, it's not that every single aspect of their dream they are able to fulfill. So even in this life, we don't have much control over what the future will bring. So beyond this life, the level of control that we have is very less. Now sometimes some people may remember the past lives and they will say, okay, I was here, here, here. And some people may say that I went from here to there. But how much of it was a conscious intention? Or how much of it was simply a recollection after the event? That is something which has to be analyzed specifically. Now there might be some very evolved saints or very evolved souls. They might reincarnate again and again. And they might reincarnate out of compassion to help others. So whether those souls actually do that, there are legends about it. But whether it actually happens that way, that will need to be open to investigation. See, what we are focusing on here is that is reincarnation for real? Now, once you go into the specifics of reincarnation, there are certain practices which can raise our consciousness upwards. But generally, once our consciousness becomes more spiritually evolved, we seek to rise beyond the material world to attain the spiritual level of reality, not reincarnate in a particular level again. Because we understand that at the material level, life is temporary, life is distressful, and the soul's ultimate destination exists beyond the world of matter. So that's why most souls don't have the capacity. Those souls who may have the capacity, they would much rather evolve beyond this world rather than come back at a specific place in this world. Yeah. So let me move on. I'll just complete this talk and then I have a couple of points which I wanted to make. So I said I'll talk about this from 3 different perspectives. So I talk primarily from the scientific evidence perspective. Now, what does reincarnation actually explain? So this is also another evidence which I will not go into, but I talk about this in non-intersecting sets. What is the intersection? That is the soul. Now, rationality, if we consider that, okay, some people have experienced some past life memories, but I have not experienced it. Why should I believe it? What is the point of believing it? So we can look at it from a purely rational perspective. All of us have a longing to live forever and a longing to love forever. Most of the movies, most of the novels, they are about romance. And most of the endings, at least people hope, will be happily ever after. Now, if you look at real life, it's never like that. And yet, all of us long for it. So where did this longing come from? If we were simply material creatures, then in our experience in the material world, nothing lasts forever. Even huge skyscraper buildings or huge mountains, nothing lasts forever. So if nothing lasts forever, and if nothing lasts forever at the material level of reality, and if we are simply material creatures, then where do we get the desire to live forever from? Where did the desire come from at all? So imagine there's a child in a remote African tribe, no connection with any of the rest of the world. And suddenly, one day the child comes and says to his mother, Mother, I want a pizza. What? Where did you hear about this? Oh, the child's desire, there's no circumstance, no way the child would have known about it from the circumstance. So, our desire to live forever is as extraordinary as that African child's desire for pizza. There's nothing in the stimulus to stimulate that. So when that is stimulated, it means that that desire is not coming from our material externals. It is coming from something internal within us, which is eternal. So what the Bhagavad Gita tells us is that our longing for eternity, longing for eternal life, points to a part of us that is eternal. And that is seeking that eternity or that eternality at the material, physical level. And that is the soul. So, this longing for eternality is universal. We may not have had past life memories, but it's something which we all have, and from this we can make a reasonable inference about it. And further Gita explains that we are all parts of the divine. So there are 2 aspects to our eternal longing. One is, we long to live forever and we long to love forever. So the Gita explains that we all are souls and we are part of the whole. The whole can be known by different names and different traditions. The Gita knows that whole by the name Krishna. So, we are parts of that infinite. And we are all meant to have an eternal relationship with that infinite. And the ultimate purpose of our life is to evolve spiritually. Spiritual evolution means that our object of love, the object on which we concentrate our loving desire, it rises to the spiritual level. The ultimate spiritual reality is Krishna, is God. And learning to love, learning to direct our love towards the eternal, that is the essence of spiritual evolution. So when we evolve spiritually sufficiently, so that our love for the divine becomes greater than our love for the things in this world. That is when we go beyond this world. So as long as our love for matter is more than love for spirit, we stay in the world of matter. But once our love for spirit becomes greater than our love for matter, then we attain the world of spirit. And that is the place where reincarnation ends. Instead of coming again and again in different bodies and playing different roles, forming different relationships, having it all thwarted at the time of death, we go beyond it all to life eternal. So, when people ask about a soulmate, often they think of a physical partner in this life. It's okay, we all need partners, we all need relationships. At the same time, these relationships at the level of the body can't be eternalized because the body is not eternal. But we do have an eternal relationship with our Lord. So the soul's ultimate soulmate is Krishna. So instead of trying to incorporate reincarnation into the materialistic worldview, and the materialistic worldview is that the things that we have in this world, they are life's ultimate pleasure. And we add reincarnation to it. Rather, what we do is let reincarnation redefine our worldview, whereby we see that there is a higher level of reality and there is an eternal relationship at the spiritual level. So when we pursue that relationship, that is the path to lasting happiness. And the time-honored process by which we redirect our love from the world to the divine. That process is Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is the process that leads to the successful conclusion of the cycle of reincarnation. So when we connect with the eternal spiritual supreme and we learn to love that supreme, then we go out of the cycle forever to be united with the divine. And then we never come back, but we have a life of eternal love and eternal joy. So I'll quickly summarize. I spoke on the topic of reincarnation. I started by talking about what is the evidence for it. Scientific. I talked about primarily past life memories. And in that there are 4 lines of empirical evidences. What were they? Recollections, recognitions, behaviors, and birthmarks. Yes, thank you. And I talked about 2 cases. One was of Naresh Kumar Raidas, who claimed to be Mushi Ali Shah, and the second was of Nasib Uludas Kiran, who claimed to be Nasib Budak. And especially I talked about the 6 correlating birthmarks, very low probability of that. Then we discussed whether it could be some other way to explain it. So the knowledge is too intimate to be just arrived at by guesswork. So, and it cannot be fraud because there is no monetary gain, there is no fame, there is no religious motive. And then I talked about, we had elaborate question answer various aspects we discussed about reincarnation. And then I talked about how when the soul is unable to get the next body, it becomes a disembodied being, like a homeless, bodiless soul, that's a ghost. And this, we may not have had past life memories. We discussed various reasons for that and why some souls have past life memories also. Normally, as we move forward, we forget the past. Our memories are largely situational, and a part of coping with distressful memories is that we tend to forget them with the passage of time. Some souls remember because they have traumatic deaths, and the soul doesn't get time to process the event of death. And that's why once the soul the child who remembers the previous life gets emotional closure, the memory's intensity goes down. And then I will talk about, even if we have not had past life memories, we all have a universal longing for eternal life and eternal love. And that points internally towards a non-material eternal part of us, and externally it points to a non-material divine who is the ultimate object of our love. The soul's multi-life journey through incarnation is meant for spiritual evolution. It means evolution or elevation, expansion in its conception of who is the object whom I should love the most. And when we love the eternal supreme, then we attain that eternal level of reality. And Bhakti Yoga is a process which enables us to love the divine and thereby attain life eternal. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.